I am Simon Kennedy, and I am the president of the Australian Association of Voice Actors, largely inspired by Mr. Tim Friedlander from the National Association of Voice Actors. Who is here present, and we also have Tanya Buchanan from the Canadian Association of Voice Actors. It's NAVA, it's AAVA, it's CAVA, and if it's early in the morning, you might want a cup of Java. I don't know, so I don't think it is.
Yeah,
it's lunchtime in Sydney. Dinner time in LA, and it's bedtime in New York and Canada. So welcome. Now, we haven't discussed who goes first, but what we're doing here today, ladies and gentlemen, is pretty much offering a roundup of 2025 and the state of AI and voice. It's been an interesting year across the world, in Australia, in Canada, and in the US. Now, this event, if you can call it that, kind of just came to be when Tim and I were chatting. And my apologies to my Commonwealth brethren in Canada that Tanya and CAVA were a later inclusion, because it just happened, really. And she said, hey, if ever you want it, we could be part of that. I'm like, yeah, should. Let's do that. So I'm happy right now for Mr. Tim Friedlander to kick off his review of what's happening with voice in legislation, in technology, in the world of voiceover, ladies and gentlemen, when it comes to AI.
All right.
Tim, how
are you? All right. Good to see y'all. I see a lot of people here. I know there's people who are trying to get in, and it's good to see y'all here. Yeah. Great to be here. This literally was like on a whim. We're like, let's just do something, and then all of a sudden we were doing something. So here we are. We'll plan ahead next time for an end of the year thing, because part of, and I think this kind of goes for for all of the work that we're doing. We're all so busy doing it that a lot of times we forget to stop and actually tell people what we're doing. And so having an opportunity like this to be able to talk about the things that we're doing. And I think is a great opportunity, for us. I'll talk a little bit about the U.S. perspective, which has been very much of a global perspective, because as we know, AI is a global industry, and is something that has no borders, has no boundaries, and it's going to affect everybody regardless of where you live. And you no longer just need to be in the U.S. to get a U.S. voice, or be in Canada to get a Canadian accent, or be in Australia to get an Australian voice, or whatever it might be. So, localization where you live is no longer necessarily access to a lot of the things that you used to get by living where you live. And I say that as somebody who lives in Los Angeles, where a lot of people came to Los Angeles specifically because of the access to the work that was here. A lot of people come if you're booking animation or video games, or other genres that are specifically in Los Angeles. People would come here for those things, and you no longer necessarily need to be there. I'm going to talk about a little bit about some of our overall approach, and then I want to kind of go through. I want to leave everybody here with a little bit of a thought experiment, or a little bit of an empowerment for you to ask the people who come to you asking about using AI. One of the things that we've done this last year has been to go to conferences to talk to companies who are using AI, to make sure that we ask them questions. How are you prepared to navigate this world of AI if you are going to be using voices? So you make sure that you are using them properly, ethically, making sure that, are you prepared for the liability that comes along with using AI in your company? And so I'm just going to show you a little bit of just a one-page slide, maybe 2 pages, of this kind of business approach that we've been taking. Not a business approach, this approach to talking to businesses about voice actors and about voice specifically. So the U.S., obviously on a global scale, the administration change in the U.S. affected many things around the world when it came to AI. This administration is very pro AI, at the expense of many other industries, many other, the environment potentially, depending on this access of trying to build and push these data centers. So we went from an administration last year that was looking at not necessarily taking a pause, but taking kind of a measured approach to AI and how it affects the world, going now to a administration that is basically, let's get rid of all the guardrails, all the stops are off, let's just go for it. And that affects the entire globe in certain areas, but it affects specifically the U.S. in two things that we've been fighting for this year. One that was out in what was called the Big Beautiful Bill, which was this AI moratorium that they tried to put into the Big Beautiful Bill that would have stopped states in the United States from putting in their own legislation around AI regulation. And one of the things, for those of you who are not in the U.S., is that we are very much independent states a lot of the times. And California does not always agree with Texas, or agrees with Washington, or agrees with Illinois or other states. And the federal government does not necessarily step in to solve those state conflicts. And I don't know if this is the same, Tanya, in Canada as well, and maybe it's the same in Australia as well. But I know that there is very much of this idea of independence within the states, and you have states who want to, who talk about doing their own thing, and California tends to lead. Because we tend to be, California is the fourth largest economy at this moment, behind the U.S., Germany, and Japan. And so what happens in California a lot of times will affect what happens elsewhere. But there was this moratorium that was tried to put into place in the Big Beautiful Bill. Many people around the world made their voices heard and said the states need to be able to maintain their rights to make regulations. This is now back in play as of 2 weeks ago. They're trying to put it into a national defense bill that's going through. There also was talk very briefly about the president releasing an executive order that would say, basically, that would prohibit the states from regulating AI in any capacity. That's been this very broad, overarching approach that we've taken. We've been looking at. I've been in DC. I think the last count that we were in DC probably 9 or 10 times this last year, for various different events or meetings, trying to make sure that we had representation in that room, representation of artists, of creatives, of voice actors specifically in those rooms, and that has very much become a part of our approach over this last year, is to make sure that we are kind of in all places. And if anybody anybody sees my agents, tell them I apologize for not getting my auditions in. I've been busy out there being flying around the world. So as we do these things, this is an ever-changing. Nobody knows what the answers are to this. This is new technology that nobody has ever seen. We don't know how to regulate it. We don't know how to protect many people from it. We don't know how to protect communities and the environment from some of the damages that are happening. So there are people trying to do multiple different approaches to this. So there's lots of people out there with lots of great ideas, and we're all trying to figure out how to work through this together. And the people on this call, so Tanya, Simon, the other groups that are here, we're all trying to figure this out. We're all learning about this and making up the best possible choices that we can make for this technology. Even the people who build these systems don't really fully know what they can or will do, what they're capable of. So this is an opportunity right now for every single person on this call to make sure that you are asking questions. Nobody else out there really knows much more than you do when you're in a conversation with somebody. And so this is making sure that we can present our concerns, making sure that we are educated on what those concerns might be, making sure that we can have a conversation with a company or a business that wants to either hire you to make an AI voice, or is potentially thinking about firing you and using an AI voice instead. So I'm just going to go through. I'm going to just do a screen share real quickly here and just talk through a couple of things that we have been talking with businesses about this year. And Simon and I've showed this to Simon very briefly and very quickly. He and I went through this. But I'm going to share this with you. We're good. Great. So we wanted to really leave these companies that we were talking to with questions they needed to go back and think about or ask when they were thinking about using AI. So very first thing we talked about was asking these companies if they know how their data is sourced. Many people don't know where the data came from. And by data, we mean where are all those voices that you are using in your system that's going to be the brand voice of your company. Where did it come from? Was it trained on publicly available performances? One of the things that we talk about a lot is because public doesn't mean that you have permission. And just because it's convenient doesn't mean that there is consent. And so we're trying to work with these companies to make sure that they understand that just because they can take something doesn't mean they have the right to it. And that includes our voices. Another thing we were talking to people about is, are you a decision maker? Are you in a position in your company? So this is with the producers you're working with. You have a producer who comes and asks you, I want to do an AI job. Ask them, are you in a position to influence how AI and voice data are used within your company? And if you're not, how can I talk to somebody who is? And if you are, let's have a conversation about how you should be using these things. How are you going to use voice? Unauthorized cloning isn't just unethical, it's a liability. And so in a company, ask them, how is their data moving between their organization? Who controls it? Where is it stored? Who can access it? Do the interns have access to this? If you're talking about a recording studio, does an intern have access to your voice? How is it secure to prevent misuse both inside and outside of your company? And then another one that I really strive to bring to a very, very high level of importance, and this is with agents and producers and talent. Who is your contract with? Who are you actually signing that contract with? So one of the things that we've learned when we've been in conversations with these companies, they say, well, I just got it through HeyGen, and they give me an API or they link me into 11 Labs. And so we asked that company, so who's your actual contract? Do you actually have the rights to that voice? Are you sure you actually have the rights to that voice? Or are you just going off of the contract, the agreement that you have with 11 Labs or with HeyGen? And what happens if you need to actually track that voice down? What are you going to do? Are you going to be able to actually find that voice actor to do pickups? What happens if that voice leaves the platform? What are you going to do? And then we kind of got into this, and I just want to go through this one. These are all of the things that we were asking these companies. So it's not just a voice actor concern. This is a concern for anybody who is using voice. So what about your brand voice, your company's liability, your customer trust? So one of the things we talk about a lot is, how do these companies protect their brand voice? We have our voices that we're very concerned about protecting. How does T-Mobile, Verizon, Chase, Bank of America, how do they protect their brand voice, even if it's a synthetic voice? How are you navigating is something for all of us to discuss. How are you navigating international biometric laws? We talk about Scott Rail as an example of the voice actor whose voice was used for the Scottish rail system. She lived in a different country, had her voice potentially used in a third country or possibly sent somewhere else. So how do you as a company navigate all of these biometric laws? And a really great thing to ask everybody is, how are you prepared for the damage that's going to come to your company reputation and trust by using an AI voice? If anybody's been following Amazon the last few days with the AI dubbing, they've been called out globally on a pretty massive scale for creating an AI dub. Now, their reputation and trust may not necessarily be as high as other companies are, but that's still going to be potentially damaging to their company. One thing that we found really interesting in our conversations this last year were, well, I don't need to hire a voice actor. I'm just going to clone my own voice. So great. How are you going to protect your own voice? You're a producer in a recording studio. How do you protect your own voice? And every single person we talked to said, wow, I hadn't thought about that. Okay. Well, you're putting your voice out there into the world. We've been thinking about it for years. You are like, well, it's just going to be easier for me to clone my own voice. So how are you going to protect your own voice? From the company side, what do you do if a voice actor approaches you saying that you've been using their voice without permission? Is this company prepared? This company is going to use this AI voice. Are they prepared for when they inevitably get a voice actor who says, that's my voice? How are they going to do that? As a company side, what if the company you use to generate your synthetic voice goes out of business? So you're going to get rid of human voice actors, and you're going to go to, let's say you're going to go to just a startup company that's got a bunch of great voices. You build your entire brand reputation. The voice of your company is this specific voice from this startup. What do you do when that startup goes out of business? You can't find the voice actor. What do you do? And then a really interesting one that the answer to this is almost always is, well, my boss told me to, is, why are you using AI instead of a human? Why? Is it faster? Is it cheaper? It's usually not. So why are you using AI instead of a human? And then one of the last things we asked was, does your storage system ensure no biometric data leakage? Who has access at your company? One of the things that we've really kind of been trying to unravel these last couple of years is the fact that we as voice actors sign away our performances. We license our performances, but we have never licensed our voice print or our biometric data or given that away to somebody. So you have companies who are saying, well, I have the license to your voice. Here's the contract. Well, you have the license to that performance. Does not mean you can take that and use it to create something else. And many states, many countries have very strong biometric protections. Canada has a stronger one. The U.S. has the least biometric protections that we know of the major on the planet. Maybe Simon, maybe Australia as well. European Union, GDPR. You've got various other protections that are out there. So what happens now for a company if this audio gets leaked from you, this voice you have gets leaked? Now you're not leaking your performance. Now you're actually leaking, and you're potentially infringing on somebody's biometric data. And now you're getting into biometric laws. We're beyond copyright laws at this point, and now we're into biometric protection and personal identifiers, and that becomes much, much different than talking about copyright. All of these questions that we just went through are all things that you can talk to somebody when they say, I want to use an AI voice. You can ask them all of these questions. Talk to them about the reality of using an AI voice, of using a synthetic voice, and all of the liability and the risks that come into that, and the fact that it's not quicker, it's not cheaper, it isn't faster, it isn't usually better. The most current info we have is from SiriusXM that says still 3 years in a row it takes twice as long to create a commercial with an AI voice than it does to create a commercial with a human voice. That's been consistent for 3 years now. That number has not changed. So as the technology has grown, it has not become easier and quicker to make a commercial with an AI voice. It's quicker with a human. You ensure that human stays around. You've got that access to that human. Yet anytime you can call in and get a pickup from that human, you can call Tanya and any of these agents out there, and you can connect with the human who is there is going to work for you. You can license, you can have exclusivity with that human in a way that you can't have with an AI voice. And for companies who are thinking about using AI voices, these are all potential things that they have probably not thought of, and that we as actors, as voice actors, as any kind of artist can ask them when somebody approaches us. One of the things that we hear a lot is, well, I don't know what to tell somebody when, like, how do I convince somebody not to use an AI voice? Well, you can't convince them not to use an AI voice, but you can ask them all of these questions and let them lead themselves to the answer that it probably is better to use a human voice. The liability is less. You can get a better quality product, and you're going to be able to get what you want in less time for less work and possibly less money. And so that's been kind of our approach for the last year. Narrative. So actually, that's just real quick. I didn't see the Simon's comment. Narrative.ai is a great example. So is anybody here? You can just show me, raise hands if possible. But anybody familiar with Narrative AI? They were one of 3 companies that had signed an agreement with SAG-AFTRA to follow SAG-AFTRA requirements when creating AI voices. 2 of those companies have gone out of business, Replica Studios.ai, which was based in Australia, and Narrative.ai closed down just a few months ago, actually probably 2 months ago. What was interesting about Narrative.ai, they go exactly back to what I said earlier, is who's your contractor with or where you're getting your voices. Narrative.ai had an agreement with SAG-AFTRA. Voice actors would sign an agreement with Narrative.ai, and Narrative.ai uses 11 labs to make all their voices. And so why don't I just go and work with 11 labs? Or why don't I just not work with any of these? Because I don't necessarily even know where my voice is going to be going. Does Narrative.ai, do you really know if they're going to be able to control that voice? We don't necessarily know. I know towards the end they had left 11 labs and had gone to a different company, but they still were using a third-party company to do this. And so that was a really kind of an interesting, very interesting revelation when you're talking to a company. Narrative.ai looked like they were doing it great. They had controls, they had protections. You could have exclusivity. You could check off like very granular. I don't want to work in fast food, but I can work very specifically for McDonald's, but no other fast food. I don't want to work in automotive, and I want to actually get rid of the entire car sector, but I'm willing to work trucks. You could actually get that granularity with Narrative.ai, which was actually really cool. But when you find out then that they're using a third party to make their voices, it becomes a different conversation. And now you've got multiple layers of liability and a potential that your voice is going to disappear at one of those areas. So that's my quick recap of the year. This is obviously the tip of the iceberg on what is happening out there, but hopefully leave you all with some very tangible questions to ask the next time a company approaches you and says, I'm going to go to use an AI voice instead of human voices. Why should I use a human voice? Well, these are all of the reasons that it is potentially better to use a human voice than it is to use a synthetic voice.
And Tim, can I get you to give us a little bit of a, in a nutshell, I'm in a nutshell, on where we are in the US. I know state by state. What's the most promising, horizon when it comes to AI laws and voice?
So we've actually stopped talking about it. We stopped talking about AI regulation about a year ago, and we're talking about trying to protect Americans' rights to own their voice, image, name, and likeness. So this isn't about regulation anymore for us. It may result in regulation, but our approach is we want to make sure that everybody has the right to own their voice, image, name, and likeness, and you do in certain states. But not in every state. So we've been in DC very specifically in support of the No Fakes Act, which would make voice, image, name, and likeness an intellectual property right. By making it an intellectual property right, it now has inherently more rights and protections than it would if it's not an intellectual property right. Currently, if anybody's paying attention, the U.S. government can't do anything. So that going through at any particular time in the near future is highly unlikely. If it gets up to a vote early next year, I would be surprised. I would probably more than likely expect to see it come up for a vote middle of the year, unless they can sneak it into another bill like they're trying to do with all the things that we don't want snuck into bills. If they can sneak something good into a bill in this case, then there's a possibility it will go through earlier. But for anybody in the U.S., the No Fakes Act is what we are in support of. It provides more rights and protections for Americans for their voice, image, name, and likeness. It's got bipartisan support. If you are in California, we are going to be testifying on Monday morning at Stanford in the heart of Silicon Valley in support of AB 412, which is a transparency bill that we are trying to support. And Russell, yes, we've been trying very hard with the Fair Voices campaign. We've got 25 companies now signed on to that. I don't want to take up too much more time, but I'll talk real briefly about that. All that does, and we want to make sure everybody's clear on that, it says those companies will not sell or give away your voice without an explicit agreement or permission from you as a voice actor. So we wanted to make sure that everybody who was using these online casting platforms, including Backstage, including voices.com, that those platforms would protect your data, your audio, your voice when you upload it to their platform for auditions. This doesn't mean that they can't cast for AI voices. It doesn't mean that a client may cast on there and take your voice and use it for something. We have no way of knowing that with our agents either, right? Casting, we don't know that with the casting directors. Once it's left our desk, and I keep turning to Tanya, but once it's left our desk and it goes to our agent sends it to a casting director sends it to a producer sends it to a production manager. We don't know where that goes. So the next push will be technology that can trace, track, and monitor our audio files, which we've seen some really, really very positive examples of this in the last 6 weeks or so, that we're hoping to see potentially something that we can put into testing by the end of the year. But it's extremely difficult, and the tech companies have billions of dollars more than any college student who's got a grant at USC to develop technology does. So, we are working against this. But I will say, and I keep saying I'm going to leave you with this, but I will leave you with this. Our firsthand experience is more powerful than any lobbyist ever is going to be. If you have the opportunity to go and speak, to talk to somebody in a position of power who can make these decisions, our voices as a firsthand experience of the artists and the people who are being affected by this is way more powerful than a lobbyist who is being paid to speak on a tech company's behalf. And we have seen this time and again. And I would encourage every single person on here when you have that opportunity to speak up and talk on behalf of yourself and your experience and what this industry means to you and what it means to be an artist and what it means to be creative, do it. Because it is powerful in a way that I had not thought I had not thought possible anymore. Have left this. I am more positive than I was 2 years ago. I'm more positive than I was a year ago. I am seeing there is change on the horizon. It is fast, it is swift, it is going to be dramatic. But we've also seen an appreciation for human artists. We have seen an appreciation for what it means to actually be a creative. We have seen people realizing, wow, I can't create exactly what I want with AI in 30 seconds. I can't create it in 8 hours. It took me a week and I still couldn't create what I want. How can you as a human create something so great and perfect when I can't even do that with an AI? People are realizing that because artists make it look easy, it's not necessarily easy, and people are finding it out the hard way. So now I will leave you with that.
Well said.
Thank you so much.
Well said, Tim Friedlander. You truly are the wind beneath our wings. Hey, I'm going to go to Tanya now. That what we got from that for everyone who's not in the US, basically not in the US, is that and I always look at the No Fakes Act in my head, even though I know it's not, as an AI law, because I guess it's a law that's there to basically combat this new technology in a way that we never had to think about it before. So being innovative and coming up with solutions that aren't necessarily how do we bottle AI. You can't bottle AI. That's the kind of thinking that your organizations are doing. Tanya Buchanan, agent extraordinaire, Canadian legend and living
legend. Whoa.
icon. Now I'm going to throw to you now and tell us, as another Commonwealth nation where we still bow to the King. Tell me how the state of affairs is for you in Canada with voices and AI law.
Well, thank you for having me because I wanted to be a part of tonight because there's been a lot going on in Canada, particularly in the last couple of months and even in the last week. There is, we're slow to start, but once we get going, we get going. And, as CAVA is concerned, we're still the baby of the three of us here. And thank you to NAVA, to Tim and Karin and Simon for paving the way for us. We thank you genuinely. It's hard to follow in your footsteps, Tim, but we're trying. We had also a change in government this year. In April of this year, we have a new Prime Minister, Mr. Mark Carney. Prime Minister Mark Carney, I guess I can't call him Mr. So a lot has changed since then. Before, with the Trudeau government, before that, we did have a bill, Bill C-27, which was looking that it might pass. It was sort of still kind of there, but actually we're kind of happy it didn't. With a new change of government, everything gets thrown out and we start from scratch. There were a lot of holes in Bill C-27. So we start from scratch, and something really huge happened for us for AI and all that we're talking about is we got the Prime Minister created Canada's first ever Minister of Artificial. His official title is the Minister of Artificial Intelligence and Digital Innovation. That's Minister Evan Solomon. And why this is so important is because AI kind of always got stuck in other portfolios. So we really didn't have it. If it was in Innovation Canada's portfolio and a little bit over here in Heritage Canada and all this stuff. So we now have a minister responsible. And actually, he's from the media world and was a national TV reporter and journalist. So he understands the arts, which is great. That was huge for us when we saw that he got appointed. And he really, his first thing that he came out of the gate, and of course we know politicians talk. We got to see what they do. But he vowed to move quickly on creating a national AI strategy. And he laid out 4 sort of pillars to that. Scale, which is supporting domestic AI firms. That's huge. The new budget just came out, I think, a couple weeks ago. And they're pledging, I think it was $5 billion towards domestic AI firms and scaling, etc. Adoption, which is incentivizing AI uptake by businesses. Sovereignty is that we're hearing that a lot here, and that is keeping the data within our country and not having it stored in the US or in China, where these companies, many of them, Google, etc., are located. So there's a lot of money going to that. But the one we all want to hear is the fourth pillar was trust, and that's protecting privacy and data. So those were sort of the four pillars that he came out. And again, talk, but what are we going to do about it? And it was really great to see that in September, he appointed a 27-person AI task force. Could be good, we thought, but is it? Because when there has been a little bit of pushback, because the task force is basically made up of tech executives, venture capitalists, and computer science researchers. No labor voice, no cultural sector voice in that. And then we get to the idea of, that, because that matters, because the people that are building the AI systems are not the same people whose livelihoods are being disrupted by this. So we were a little concerned with that. But the task force is only one input. I guess December now. In October, the government launched a 30-day public consultation, and that's where CAVA came in, and that's where we mobilized. So we contacted all of our members. ACTRA, our union, showed up with all their members. So did musicians, writers, visual artists across the country, making sure that we got in there and we got our voices heard in that public consultation. Now, the question is the government going to listen to the consultation submissions as seriously as they listen to the task force? And that's kind of what we're waiting for and watching for. They're reviewing the submissions right now. They've told us that it was supposed to come out at the end of November. Well, we're at December 2nd. We haven't seen anything yet. We're hoping. We were told that the actual strategy was going to be done by the end of the year. But as we know, government delays, we're going to see. But we're all kind of waiting on pins and needles to see sort of where it sort of comes out. The AI strategy is going to tell us whether we're getting through, if they're hearing the creatives or if they're just hearing, because I'm hearing, when I see a lot of the news out there, it's all about growth and, building, we have some pretty amazing facility, kind of the right mix between energy and water and all these things to be, a big global player when it comes to databases, etc. But we're more concerned. You've got all that now. Where is the regulations? Where are the guardrails? And it can't all be based on tech companies' input, etc., etc. So where does CAVA fit in all of that? Yes, we're new and small, but we're not sitting on the sidelines with this. And because this is all relatively new, CAVA has been getting a lot of attention. We're trying to be loud when it comes to this kind of stuff. And when we first had Evan Solomon take his position, we sent a formal letter to him and, telling him who we are, what our position is, letting him know about the 3 C's. Thank you, Tim. And letting him know how, the importance of that, putting our concerns on his desk. So we didn't wait for him. We kind of went right out there. And then, like I said, we mobilized our membership for this National AI Strategy consultation. It was critical because there's nobody on the task force that, represents what we're looking for and what's important to us. It was really important for us. So we got people to submit their comments, make their voices heard, well, literally make their voices heard. And, we're just hopeful now that when the government reviews it, we sort of count in that. So it's a little bit of a hurry up and wait kind of game. And then we've been sort of building relationships as we wait. We're working with ACTRA, which is our performers union here in Canada. They've been fighting on A issues for a while at the bargaining table, at the CRTC, which is our Canadian Regulatory Board, and in Ottawa. So we've built a working relationship with them. No point in rebuilding things that they've already started there. So we're kind of working together to try and figure out how we can attack things bigger. We're also just cultivating connections with other stakeholders who have skin in the game. It doesn't necessarily have to be voice. as Tim said too, I mean, this is bigger than, and so we're really trying to build connections, strengthen numbers as we do that. So we're waiting for that national AI strategy to drop. They said by the end of the year, we will see. And that summary of the consultations hopefully will come out in the next week. And what this will mean is meaningful protections, hopefully, for performers. We're going to be looking for that consent compensation control. We're going to be looking to see if it falls short, you know what, we will publicly and have evidence to back things up to let them know that these things have to be considered. The U.S., as Tim has said, you guys have negotiated AI protections into your SAG-AFTRA contracts. The EU has got the AI Act. Australia is moving. We're a little behind in Canada, but we're moving, and we've actually had the luxury of being able to look and see what's working and what's not working. And I think that Minister Solomon is also looking at that. One of the things that I was just reading that he was saying too is, you've got quite a much stricter guardrails in the EU than in the US, and there's pros and cons for each. You have the US who's just opened things up, and then I was just reading today, and I can't remember the exact number, but it was pretty, I think because of such guardrails with the EU Act, the AI Act there, I think that I was reading it was like 20%, I don't have it here, 20% of usage of AI in Europe. So people just compared to US, Canada, North America, who are much more active with AI. So there's still to be out there, but that's kind of where we're at with Canada.
Go Canada. And I guess that's a good time for me to take us to Australia, because we have a very similar parliamentary system. Look, where is it? I'll share my screen. Right. Yeah. So 2019, I think it was, which seems really early, but the Australian government put out an AI, this is it, the AI ethics principles. God knows what it was in 2019, because what was AI to anyone in 2019, right? But it's been updated, and basically what it is voluntary code of practice or principles around AI. Some of those look fantastic on paper. You've got fairness, you've got human-centered values, basically transparency, which is what we're looking for as well. And it's a whole lot of stuff that we look at and think this is what we want. The problem is it's all voluntary, and no one's volunteering to do any of it, because the hype's real. This is something we faced earlier this year. It was the AI generated DJ that was discovered to be used for 6 months. This one was on air, and no one was told about it. It wasn't a mainstream radio station. It was a digital channel, so it didn't get a great deal of attention anyway. But the problems were that radio stations were now leaning into replacing people with AI voices. The ethics around such, we brought to them. We told them, Theresa Lim, our vice president, sat down with this radio network and told them what a huge issue it was that they have no genuine Asian Australians on air, and the only one they have is a puppet, a digital puppet with voice prompts written probably by 3 white guys. There was a lot wrong with it. This girl was she worked in finance. The picture you're looking at, she worked in the finance department. They cloned her voice. She wrote her own contract. She's like 23 years old. Definitely a problem with the ethics around that, and that made us realize that it ran a bit deeper. The Triple M network were recently discovered. It's always they get discovered. They never admit to it. Basically running AI generated news bulletins, AI script in part, AI voices, kind of localized. They even used the name of the journalist that they cloned the voice of at the beginning of each bulletin. So this is a very poor example of how to do AI ethically. Don't tell people it's AI. Let's pretend it's a human, and off we go. So this is the environment that we're facing here in Australia. There's also loads, and this is worldwide, loads of AI generated news or content, if you will. And a lot of the time, what it is scraped from a site. In this case, it was a rugby league site where they do constant updates of the game and stories around it. AI took everything from that site, rewrote it in its own AI way, and spat it out again, basically to compete with the original website. So no transparency on that. And that's what we're looking at, which is why we think mandatory, not voluntary. And that's what we're pushing for when it comes to disclosing the use of AI. That is the conversation we've been having for when we've headed into Parliament House, Canberra. And we've done so numerous times. We've met with dozens of MPs and senators. And we are asking for the same things that the rest of the world wants, the same things that NAVA wants, the same things that CAVA wants. We are looking for, of course, that it's not vital to voice actors, but it's important that copyright is upheld. And when you're scraping a film, a movie, or scraping an audio book, we don't have the copyright in that, but we are in that. Our likeness is in that. So it's very important for us that copyright is upheld. Very heartening that the Attorney General here in Australia in the last month or so announced that there will be no exemptions for AI companies to data scrape, that they have to comply with copyright. They don't get a free ride and they have to pay for what they use. So that was definitely something we were very pleased about. AAVA are on the Attorney General's copyright reference group, along with a lot of music representation and film and Screen Producers Association. So we added our little voice to that, and we are very pleased with that announcement. Of course, we are looking for, right now, anyone who follows AAVA's socials, we're pushing very hard on labeling of AI generated content. Now, there's two ways to play that. We say that it's for the general public because they deserve to know what they're consuming. And they do. We're all dealing with piles of AI slop. I mean, I love a dancing cat, sure, but I've got my own cat. I can make it dance when I want to. I don't need a fake cat with human teeth. So we want to know when we are consuming AI generated content, because some people can't tell. A lot of people can't tell. The vulnerable are in a very, I guess, vulnerable position because as Alistair Lee, one of our committee members, who is a blind voiceover artist, an absolute gem of a man, Alistair says, as the AI voices are getting better and better, as my vulnerability gets more and more, and that is a fact. He doesn't have secondary senses to pull apart what's going on. Very important. The flip side of pushing for mandatory labeling of AI generated content, and we would love to see this very much, especially in the advertising sector, it would save jobs. It would save a lot of jobs, our jobs, because we all know advertisers, and when they've got to put a disclaimer on the end of an ad or anywhere on the ad, they lose that valuable creative airtime, and it also taints their ad. If you have an advertiser, let's just say, I don't know, a bank that's looking for trust, put your hard-earned money with us. If that bank has to say at the beginning of their commercial, the following commercial contains an AI-generated voiceover, people are going to listen to that commercial with very different ears, and the trust in that bank's going to probably halve. And I don't think those advertisers will want to do it. So they'll hire human. So that is really our industry tactic when it comes to labeling. Watermarking, of course, is a way of tracing, where that AI voice came from. And if you think it's you, if it's watermarked correctly, you should be able to go back to the source and find out. Identity protections, of course, are important. We started with this last year and realized that everyone we spoke to, senators and members of parliament, were like, "Whoa, this feels this feels big. This feels like a lot to come up with because Australia doesn't have a Bill of Rights like America does. So we don't even have a framework to kind of build off. It would be creating something brand new in a way, a new moral right, if you will. We still put it forward, and we still kept telling people how important it was that Australians don't have these rights and don't have any ownership over their voices or their faces. And we were very pleased. This is a gentleman that we are very pleased to see in the Australian Senate. Senator David Pocock. Not only did he play rugby for Australia, the man's a bit of a legend. He's an independent senator representing the Australian Capital Territory, and he put forward a bill, a private member's bill, that every Australian would have ownership over their face and their voice and their likeness. Now, this is something we were pushing the government for a while, and unfortunately, our government has not done much. So Senator Pocock went out and said, well, I'm going to put this one forward. And he did. A lot of people are very excited about this. I know I am. Will it get across the line? That's hard to say. One thing governments do not like is being told what to do by crossbenchers or by minor parties. They do not like being pushed into a situation, and they, like any ego, they want to think it's their idea. So how will they react to David Pocock exposing the fact that they've done nothing remains to be seen. So we'll find out. But I am very pleased that this gentleman has put this conversation right front and center, and it's done a lot of work for us by having that. Yeah, but will it come off? That's another story. Stay tuned. The government has just announced, the Australian government has just announced an AI safety commission, I think they call it. What does that mean? I think just like Tanya was describing, it's a lot of talking. It will be a lot of talking. But it's good that it's there. The reason it's there is because they don't want to do anything. They have announced that they don't want to create AI-specific laws. They don't want to regulate AI per se, because they see the opportunity. Australia is a big country with a lot of resources, but a very small population. They don't want AI developers to look at Australia as too hard. They want them to build their data centers here. They want them to come here and bring their money here. Now, a lot of the rhetoric and thinking is that there's an AI bubble and it's going to burst. One thing governments want is for all the private sectors to invest their money in Australia, regardless of a bursting bubble or not. Because just like the dot-com boom, a lot of internet companies went bust. However, what they left behind was the internet. So that is what I think our government is thinking, that we make it easy for them to invest in Australia. If they go out of business down the track, so be it. We've seen that happen before. So I think there's a hands-off approach from our government, very hard to combat because they have a massive majority. They were re-elected earlier this year with a 94-seat majority in the House of Representatives. That is absolutely insane. If there's one shining light there, it's that the Senate, they do not have a majority in the Senate. They have to do deals in the Senate. And the people they have to do deals with are the people who are really listening to us, Senator David Pocock and the Greens. So the AI plan Australia has launched is, let's see what happens. No plan. So when we're talking about mandatory labelling, we have to approach this, I guess, department by department. Labelling is the Department of Communications. Very difficult to get a meeting with the Minister for Communications. Anyone around the world may have heard of Australia's ban for teens using social media. Well, that's the Department of Communications. She's very busy, fighting off Meta and so forth at the moment. amongst other things. Copyright and identity protections, that's the Attorney General. That's a difficult department to really spend time with, but we have got our connections there. And then there's data security, which is one that is well down the track for us, and that's the Department of Industry. Department of Industry is very AI friendly. So these are the parties we're dealing with. The Australian Labor Party in government at the moment, absolute majority in the House of Representatives, not so much in the Senate. The Liberal Nationals, the Conservatives, very much decimated, which is not a problem for us generally because they don't go out of their way to help artists or creatives. The Greens, they love us. They've been very helpful, and they're very, very much a power in the Senate. And then there's the Independents. So we have got friends in there, just, not as many as we'd like. Yeah, a few trips to Canberra. You can see Alistair Lee and King, the guide dog. King, very popular, very popular. He opens doors. He's great. That's Theresa Lim, Vice President. And there's David Pocock and I, and Cecilia Ramsdale, who's on the line. She's our National Secretary. David Pocock and myself, very similar. We have quite a few appearances between us at the Rugby World Cup. I'll leave that there. None of them were me. But leaving my little piece here, before we go to questions, for those who live in Australia, and I do want this just to be for Australian citizens, because we've set up labelalai.net, and this basically, we did it for the industry, so that the advertising industry and the media industry, and we've marketed this to them so that they can put to the communications minister their desire to see labeling made mandatory, because it'll save voice jobs. It'll also save copywriters' jobs, creatives in advertising, actors, directors. There's a lot of jobs. There are a lot of jobs to be lost through AI generated commercials. So that's what we've done. But there's no reason why anybody who's an Australian citizen can't get onto labelalai.net and add your name to an email to the communications minister. It's very simple to do. Just put in your email, your postcode, and off you go. And that will send an email to let the communications minister know that you want something done. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Australia in a nutshell. There are some promising things, but there's a lot of personalities to navigate in the Australian government. Now, I would love to open the floor to questions. And what I want to do is you put your hand up. Hopefully you know how to do that on Zoom. We've all Zoomed enough to know. Put your hand up, ask one question if you can, and direct it to who you want to direct it to. That would be sweet. Action stations, go. Any comments, by the way, Tim, while we're waiting for hands to come up? Jump on.
Yeah, I'm gonna add, something that just happened actually happened yesterday morning, from United Voice Artists. For those who are not aware, CAVA, AAVA, NAVA are part of the United Voice Artists, which is the global kind of association of voice acting associations around the world. Put out a public statement yesterday that we have walked away from negotiations with Microsoft Gaming and all subsidiaries of Microsoft Games, which includes ZeniMax and Activision, until they are willing to have a discussion about prohibiting using our audio files for AI training. And we've been in discussions with them since probably May, and there's been no movement since then. So the German and Austrian co-presidents of UVA led this push to walk away from the negotiations. So globally, that means that that these individual associations are asking their members not to work with Microsoft Gaming. Cool. And we have a question. We got Robbie.
Hi there, Robbie from the Philippines. So I run an association called Vocal Alliance. We were trying to change our name to PAVA instead, to sort of like be on the same boat as you guys. But anyway, that's beside the point. So we're sort of trying to take a grassroots approach here because, well, legislation is really slow, and we usually just take a wait and see approach. Our copyright laws here are based largely on the US. And so whatever happens over there, we tend to adopt. a little later down the road. So my question is, because right now what we're doing instead is we're working with the private sector and we're trying to negotiate on certain contracts with regards to like advertising and stuff like that. And so we've been uh, on the negotiating table with a lot of multinationals. I wanted to know if you guys have had any discussions on that front. About how these big companies want to use or incorporate AI into the workflows, and what's happening on your side of the fence? Because over here, we're still we still haven't really come to any final says yet, and uh, so yeah, I wanted to find out if you guys have any experience in negotiating with the likes of Unilever or yeah, Colgate Palmolive, those kinds of guys.
Yeah, that's a really good question. That at least here and maybe and Simon and Tanya is kind of the same thing. That is handled solely by SAG-AFTRA.
Mm,
Here, they're the ones who have those large multinationals that they're going to be negotiating with. Tanya and Simon, is it the same? Like it's Mia and ACTRA kind of taking the lead on that, I would imagine.
Yeah.
I'd say that they should. But yeah, well, I mean, last year after we gave evidence at a Senate inquiry into the adoption of AI, and some of our evidence that we gave related to Audible's contracts and how we felt they were quite predatory when it came to how they would use voices once they had them. And yeah, we gave evidence and we quoted from their contracts, and they got quite a pasting, if you will, if that's the word you guys use, by the government members who were the senators who were hosting the inquiry. So they got taken over the coals big time. Then, because of that, they reached out to us to sit down, have a meeting to see what our concerns were. So we met with folks from Audible at their offices in Sydney. We told them our concerns, that they could just insert a few things into a contract that says that they're not going to do this and they're not going to do that, and that would be. Then we never heard from them ever again. Uh, they they guess I think they were trying to find a way to shut us up, to be honest. But they didn't like what we came to them with. They wanted that control. They wanted to do it. So I don't find that these companies are very keen to be flexible. They only come to the table when they think that they've got some power in or something to gain from it, I believe. Just as when our Vice President Theresa Lim sat down with a national radio network about the AI generated DJ and what kind of moving forward, what kind of measures or ethical practices they might implement. They listened to what she said and they came back with something else. So, yeah, you need power when it comes to these powerful companies, basically what I'm saying, I think.
Oh, we'll keep you
Ours is
guys posted.
similar, but
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
our union actually, works more with the ad agencies and then the ad agencies through to the big corporations. So that's sort of our route to the big guys.
Hmm.
Right. Yeah,
That
but
would
we're
be,
Yeah.
working directly with them. So it's
Yeah, I mean that's great. I mean, and props to you, Robbie. Like I know, you and I've emailed a few times over the last couple of years with, I
right.
think we've for some stuff. So, great on you for doing that. Like more of these individual people doing exactly what you're doing. What we've all kind of done is stood up to this. But that's a really good question. I don't think it's interesting that you get to go directly to those companies. And I think, at least from what we've seen in our experience, is that a lot of them, kind of what Simon said, they don't necessarily want to know how to work with us. They basically want us to give them permission to keep doing what they've already been doing and try and get us to give them the okay. And I think this is where, the what we've heard consistently this last year is that, labeling and disclosure is going to be the most important thing that we can do because I think consumers are going to play a big part in this. So, from your side, Rob, if you don't get these agreements with them, let consumers know, call these things out, make sure if
Yep.
there's an AI generated product from Unilever, call it out, make sure your community knows to look out for these things, make it well known when somebody is trying to get around and do something with an AI voice or with, synthetic anything, AI generated things. So.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. Oh, wait, one last question.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Any developments on the front of say like licensing your voice? How much should you charge, that kind of stuff, or is that still being negotiated?
Um, from what we've seen, in anything with a major commercial licensing should be six figures a year or higher. Is what we have seen. That's what we've seen some of these contracts be. Some of these large companies are paying 100,000 or more a year to license a voice, but you cannot do that without a substantial amount of time spent on that contract to make sure that it is absolutely ironclad.
Right.
I know there's one person we know who spent 2 years negotiating a contract for a synthetic version of their voice. 2 years
Wow.
before they were willing to go forward with that. And the company wanted to do it. They worked with them for 2 years, but it was a 2-year process. And that contract was seen by, every single letter in there was like that. But I would say right now is that general approach is that I would not enter into any licensing agreement currently right now to license your voice, even on a large scale. I'm even saying, record labels shouldn't be licensing. Universal Music Group, Warner Brothers should not be licensing anything right now. It's out of fear. I think people are afraid that if they don't do it now, they're going to get absolutely nothing. And I think what they're doing is that they are giving away whatever power they did have to have a voice in this conversation, because once they've given away the data and the access to that data, there's no leverage left.
Right.
And as things change, so I would say it would have to be substantially valuable enough for me to never work again, never have to work
Right.
again, for me to ever enter into a licensing agreement for anything currently.
That's
As an
exactly
agent,
right.
that's what I'm saying
Yeah,
to my talent as well. Now is not the time.
It's
yeah,
also a case of, and I think narrative was a really good example where we were speaking to Ben from Narrative, and I'm sure you were, Tim, as well, at one point, because he was looking at entering the Australian market, and we were talking to him about it, and we're saying, look, you should be looking at the MEAA rates, and you should be doing this, and this, if this is how it's going to be, it should be like this, and on paper, it all looked pretty good, and we're like, okay, he's playing by the ethical rule book. But when I said, what is your model trained on? That's when the conversation did get a bit vague. And as we found out, it was a skin for 11 Labs, right? And that would have been from the get-go for us. Yeah, nah, not happening. Not
no,
happening.
same thing. I mean, we got that information 45 minutes into our conversation with him, and literally, we were like, well, there's the end of our conversation. Like, what else? So you really have no say. You're not the person to talk to, because you're not the one actually controlling the data. You don't have the ability to even say whether it is safe or not, or to know what guardrails are in place, or to know how it's being used. So, but yeah, Robbie, let's see PAVA. Let us know when you're ready to launch PAVA. We'll get you up and running.
Yeah, I love it. Pava. All right. No one's got questions. I mean, you guys are obviously feeling well informed. That's okay.
Yeah, we're doing
Well,
good.
it's late at
We're doing
night,
good.
late at night on the US East Coast. And
Yeah,
we're feeling like it's time for a cup of hot chocolate in bed.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Well, if there are no more
Yes.
questions, then we'll let everyone go to their evening/day. Uh,
No more questions. That's amazing.
we must have done a good job.
I guess so. So. I have a question. So then for for AVA and CAVA, what do you guys anything on the horizon for you in the next, between now and the beginning of the year, maybe the next month or so, that you have, that we should be aware of, keep an eye out for next year?
Well, definitely for us, it's and I'm going to put it into for all the Aussies, labeLAI.net. Get on that and fill it out. It's simple. What I would also say is, as our Parliament has now finished for the year, So one thing that we can do is inundate the politicians' emails, inboxes with requests for action on AI. And I think that that's one thing we have in Australia, which is very precious, is that you can get in contact with your local member very, very easily, and you should. And if you haven't, why not? Being a member of AAVA is a wonderful thing. You've got some guys who are working very hard for you, but it's really powerful when you send a message as well. So that's what I would ask everyone to do over this Christmas period, because Australia pretty much shuts down for beer for the next 8 to 10 weeks. Beer and barbecues.
And for us, we're just waiting for this AI strategy, and we're just internally working on scenarios on what is our next move once that comes out. If it's A goes this way, B goes that way, or somewhere in between. We're going to jump on it as soon as it gets released.
Yeah.
Let's answer. As Casey asked a question, I've got a question. Everyone I talk to who is with AI says, "Wait till AI gets better." Seems to be everyone's defense. How better is it actually going to get? This is a great question, and I'll give you some personal thoughts and then some actual hard data. It's already good enough to fool probably 95% of the people who see it and hear it. It's going to get to the point where it is indistinguishable from human-generated content. Truth is out the window. The internet is essentially dead for factual information. It takes 2 or 3 or 4 searches to actually confirm that something you've been given is factual anymore. Going back to, I mentioned SiriusXM earlier, their current study says that 95% of the time people cannot distinguish between a human voice and an AI voice. 95% of the time. When they're told it is an AI voice, the trust level drops by 50%, and people substantially no longer trust the voice because they know it's AI. But just hearing it, they can't tell the difference. And it will get better. It still is not great, as we have seen in the Amazon AI dub that came out over the weekend or came out last week, where it is honestly terrible in certain areas. So, at some point, like what we've kind of said, is, well, let's just step back and say, go for it. You think you can do it? Do it. You can make something that you want. You can make you can do a full project AI generated. Go for it. Do it. Let's see what you got. You say you can do it, then go ahead and do it. And that's risky because it may be something phenomenal. But time and again, what we've seen is that it is it's half as good, if not just downright terrible. So that's what I say. And then, yeah, Gregory, easier to identify long form AI. Absolutely. One of the things that I think we saw in you hear and you see in these long forms is an audiobook where the voice they mispronounced, they changed the name partway through because it doesn't remember how it said a name earlier in a book and nobody's listening. Or in, I think the example from the one that just came, the anime that came out, is that they pronounced finger as finger, like ginger, and nobody caught it, right? Or I can't remember, so in long form it can't keep up. And we hear this time and again. I've used that phrase a lot, time and again. And so this is the new in these unprecedented times. But like, who is checking it? It's probably AI generated and AI quality controlled. So it can't do it, and we got to keep calling it out. We need to ask for labeling, disclosure. And Kim, you're absolutely right. People do have to care as much about mispronunciations. I think that what people will feel that disconnect when there is something in there that isn't human. And I don't know, this is me being woo-woo, whatever it might be, but I think, you spend enough time with an AI generated book, you will eventually disconnect from it. You won't be engaged with it. You won't want to listen to it more. People may not know why, but I think that they can just inherently feel that and won't want to engage with it. And in some areas, short form, they will. And this is something that maybe, I know we were trying to wrap this up. Maybe Simon and Tanya, we've started to discuss frequently this idea about the difference between actual voiceover and voice acting. And that for a lot of times it was very interchangeable, but actually that is actually probably not considered, not true anymore. that voiceover is this idea of just exchanging information where there's no emotional connection. It's training videos, it's HR videos, it's whatever else it might be. And we're seeing that go to AI. I think we've seen that here at least of, and then that which is voice acting, which requires human experience and nuance and childhood trauma and childhood experiences and real lived pain and joy. That is voice acting, and that is what is going to be in many areas not replaceable. But I think many other areas voiceover is going to be replaceable by AI. I think we are seeing it happen already.
And I mean, we could talk about a million different areas of this, but dubbing, because we are a French English country, dubbing is a big issue for us in Canada and around the world. But particularly, it's something that Montreal is doing a lot of work on trying to figure that out.
I tell you one thing AI has done for me, and maybe for a lot of people, is that I've tried to make my auditions less perfect than they used to be, and I'm leaving a little bit of me in there that wasn't. I would have maybe once upon a time edited it out. I might have taken a little bit of that crackly thing out of my voice or something, and now I'm like, you know what? That's me, and I'm going to leave it in there because if they like me,
Yep.
they like me. So it makes it's if there's one good thing to come out of this is it's made us all realize how beautiful human performance can be. So
Yeah. Yeah.
And just for me, for my end, because I know we have to go, one of the things that we have started, and for those that want to reach out and talk about this, is actually collecting these stories about losing jobs to AI, about going to companies and hearing your voice cloned. So we actually have somebody who's collecting those stories, and we have a master document, so to speak, that we can start looking at these and having them and having these stories available when we are in front of the decision makers, etc. So
yeah, good
not
idea.
I've
over,
been keeping that
not over.
document myself. Yeah. No. Nope. Nope.
Actually, that does remind me that we are going to put out a survey to our members in the new year, which we haven't done a full survey yet, and it's going to be used when we go to Parliament because they want numbers. They want to know how many people are affected, what's been going on. So for the AAVA members on board, look out for the AAVA AI survey.
Yep. And we'll have a novel one coming out. I imagine CAVA will be doing the same thing at some point. So
Well, I would like to thank Tanya Buchanan and Tim Friedlander, CAVA, NAVA, and AAVA powered house all together.
yeah.
I know is it too early to say Merry Christmas? I'm saying it anyway. I'm going to say it because I'm just
It's all right. We'll give a little preview because we'll add to this for those who are going to be at the gala next week. We will soon be seeing lava show up into this association as well. So lava will be the Latin Association of Voice Actors will be arriving shortly to help fill out the gap that's there right now. So
the floor is lava.
yes, the floor is lava. Exactly. Awesome.
I love it. All right, guys. Well, to everyone, thank you for coming on board. Thank you, Tanya. Thank you, Tim. I think it was great to get everyone together, and we must do it again. Maybe don't wait till next December. What do you think?
Yeah. No, I think these are worth a quarterly check-in, and I think we should we'll keep this going. And thank you for putting it together, Simon. Thanks for the invitation.
Thanks, Simon.
And yeah,
Thank
we
you,
will.
guys.
Awesome.
Take care, everyone, and have a safe December.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thank you all.
Cheers.
Bye, everybody.